This story takes place over the span of 3 years, so please bear with me. My life has always been kind of interesting with its ups and downs. I live in a well-up community where the houses are well built and the neighbours are usually friendly people. Living in such a quiet town, in a quiet state, you wouldn't think that I have to deal with some things. Even though this town is well off and most people are insanely wealthy, many children here experience some types of abuse or assault. Many high schoolers are drug addicts. It's surprising looking at this community from the outside and looking on how well off people are, not realizing the horrors within. Many kids have attempted suicide or thought about it at least once due to this type of insane social pressure, depression, and lack of support at home, or all three. When I was younger, I was a sheltered kid. I was quiet, fat, and nerdy. My hair only reached down to my chin, and my glasses made my eyes look so small. Not to mention, I wore nerdy t-shirts and had no fashion sense. I had never experienced a boy liking me. Even at the age of 12, I almost knew nothing about sex education. I guess my parents thought that they didn't really need to teach me anything, because who, honestly, would hit on me? And the teachers who taught sex ed just assumed we knew it all and never went into any detail. I ended up losing some weight, and I became more developed than most of the other girls. Having a C cup in the 7th grade while every other girl was still an A. I still dressed badly. I mostly wore flannels and just worn out shorts with the same shoes every day. One guy started taking an interest in me. He was tall, well, at least to me, because I was only 4'10". He had dark hair and his eyes were brown mixed with a little bit of green. They were so unique and beautiful. He was 2 years older than me and extremely popular. Obviously, by my physical description, I wasn't. I met him over the summer and we kind of hit it off. He paid attention to me and was really sweet and kind. I was head over heels for him. I loved the way he tilted his hat to the side and winked at me, and he had a lot of muscle even at the age of 14, almost 15. My friends teased me a lot about him. Actually, most of the whole grade did. They saw the way we acted around each other and how we flirted. Every single classmate always teased me in saying I like older guys. Because of this, I started getting out of my shell. I started talking to people more and met a lot of new friends. I had no drama, and I was probably the most happiest I'd ever been in my life. Everything was going right, until it went all so wrong. That summer, he got my number. I was so excited you wouldn't believe. I never really had friends before that year, so I didn't know exactly the texting rule, if you know what I mean. How you only send 2 messages and wait till he responds and you can't send any more until they do. Well, I didn't have that rule, and I sent as many as I wanted. We spammed each other a lot, and I talked to him almost every second of the day. He made me feel so happy, until he started texting me things I didn't understand, like stuff that was extremely dirty. Like, do you have a dildo and stuff like that? I'm not going to write the details because it gets very graphic. And with me having no real sexual education, I didn't really understand how inappropriate he was being. He found out a very big secret of mine, which I'm not going to reveal here, but it was a big one. And he began blackmailing me, constantly forcing me to send him pictures of my butt and other parts. It was pretty nasty, and I was still oblivious to the whole thing. He was, as my mum would call it, a pig. He was a dirty piece of scum. I should never have talked to him. All of what our conversations were about were basically him commenting on my body, which I found extremely weird. He would talk stuff about him watching me by my window and him coming over to my house. I once FaceTimed him one night over the summer, and I was holding a big fluffy white pillow. He asked me if it was made of cum. I didn't understand what he was talking about. I felt extremely uncomfortable, but he was my only friend. Not to mention he was very popular, and I thought he could do things to me. He ended up getting physical, kicking me whenever I was walking down the hallway till I would bleed on the floor. I didn't know why he did this because I thought he liked me, and I was absolutely heartbroken. The year I started 8th grade, he stopped talking to me in text, and I just assumed he hated me, and I became crushed. But at the same time, I was relieved. I would no longer be blackmailed. That year in 8th grade, I started to care more about what I looked like. I ditched my glasses, I dyed my hair a gorgeous auburn red, and started shopping at Forever 21. I started to get into makeup and I ended up becoming pretty good at it. For the first time in my life, I got a boyfriend. He was very tall, around 6 foot, and I was really happy with him. Unfortunately, he ended up cheating on me a lot, and I had to break up with him. I was crushed, crying most days at school, learning about what he had done. I really shouldn't have, looking back on it, because he honestly wasn't worth it, and he smelled. But he was my first boyfriend, and I honestly didn't believe anyone else would like me like that in a romantic way. And he was a god for showing interest in me. That day, I texted everyone something. I forgot what it was, and accidentally sent it to handsome pervert guy. He responded saying, "Wait, you still have my number?" And I said, "Yeah," and asked him why he stopped talking to me. He explained his sister had thrown his phone into the pool and how he had lost all his contacts. I was excited we were getting back in touch because I was extremely lonely after breaking up with my ex. Once again, we became great friends and he was really nice to me, but sometimes he would have a really weird mood swing, yelling at me in mid-conversation. Finally, one day when we were talking, he started yelling at me again for no reason and told me never to speak to him again. I was in tears, absolute tears, wondering what possibly I could have done wrong again. This started in a very, very long depression where I lost touch with most of my friends and spent most of my days in bed not wanting to leave. A half a year later, I started high school. I met new people and made a lot of new friends. I hadn't been that happy since the 7th grade. Not to mention there was a new boy who was interested in me, and I have had a mini crush on him since the 8th grade. Those days I would hop onto the school bus with nothing to worry about, and I was so grateful my depression was over and I'd started a new chapter in my life. One day I was on the phone talking to my new, soon-to-be boyfriend. I was flirting with him and we were laughing about some joke he had made when I got a text from a number I didn't recognise. This was weird. Most people, if they wanted to contact me, would use Snapchat. And I don't really have a texting number, it's an iMessage with my full name and a couple of numbers. Unless you knew me or knew a friend of mine, you couldn't get my iMessage. I looked and it was a simple, "Hey." I asked who it was and the person started texting random lyrics from the song We Don't Talk Anymore from the movie Empire. I was so confused, but I played along. I asked at the end, "Can you please tell me who you are?" I'm so curious, and the person refused to reply and said they had to go. A couple of days go by and I text the number again asking who this is. I never ever thought it could be the creepy guy, and he was long gone from my mind. I didn't plan on getting back in touch with him and was angry by the way he treated me. With some visits to the therapist, I now realise how horrible he was to me, and what he forced me to do was illegal. Thinking about him just made me extremely angry. Finally, after a couple of weeks of talking to my mysterious friend, he finally confessed who it was. Yep, you guessed it, creepy guy. He explained how his parents were getting a divorce, so that's why he had so many mood swings, and then he apologised for the way he used to treat me and what he forced me to do. His words made me take pity on him, and I forgave him, a decision I still regret to this day. We became friends again, and he was a good friend until I got a boyfriend. Not long after me and creepy guy reunited as friends, I soon got the boyfriend I'd been flirting with for a while. Creepy guy soon became extremely angry whenever I mentioned him and started to get mood swings again. He saw me kiss my boyfriend on the cheek before I headed off to class and didn't talk to me for a month. He continued like this, slowly becoming the old jackass he was. My boyfriend, on top of that, started to mistreat me and started taking interest in other girls. Watching him stop liking me so slowly was breaking my heart. Our breakup, to sum it up, had left me passing out from crying so much after he dumped me in the text. I took the day off from school that day. I needed a break. I tried to convince people I was okay and I was fine and happy that it was over, but this was the furthest from the truth. I spent my day eating ice cream and watching Keeping Up with the Kardashians, crying my eyes out. I didn't want to remain friends with my ex because I was angry because of the way he treated me, and I could never really forgive him for it. Then it became February, one of the worst months of my life. I soon found a new love interest, and creepy guy decided to ruin it for me by contacting the guy and telling him I was cheating. I was furious, and he soon ended our friendship. Again, not telling me why. What a shocker, ladies and gentlemen. It took me 7 months to get out of the depression those two jackasses put me in. That summer, I had a wonderful and supportive boyfriend, and I was slowly starting to come out of my dark hole. It was hard, and I still have to visit therapy sessions due to creepy guy's actions and the things he forced me to do. I still have to put on makeup on my legs to cover up the scars he gave me. I hope I heal in the future, and slowly I am. School is coming round again, and I'm not looking forward to it. My only hope is that creepy guy will leave me alone and let me heal from his damage, and that he will never contact me again. But this has been a repeating cycle. As soon as I heal completely, that's when he comes back. But creepy guy who made so much damage to my self-esteem in childhood, let me live my life in peace. It's scary looking back at this and seeing what this all started happening to a 13-year-old. And parents, if you're reading this, make sure you teach your children the rights and wrongs of the world, and teach them what shouldn't be tolerated or said. And please, please teach your children about sex education, and make sure they have a good self-esteem. If I had these things and knew what was happening to me was wrong, maybe my life would have been a little bit calmer and better. Firstly, I'd like to say that English is my second language, so if there are any mistakes grammar-wise, or you end up having a hard time understanding what I mean, that might be the reason. This story happened to me and my friend when we were hanging out after riding our bikes. I'll refer to my friend as L for privacy reasons. This story could end up being a bit long, so I apologise in advance. Elle and I casually went for a ride and agreed to make a final stop by the church in our neighbourhood. When I say church, I mean its surrounding park and parking space, not the building itself. We don't go and sit in the church to hang out, lol. Anyway, the church was a pretty common hangout spot in our neighbourhood, since it had a big parking space and many benches under trees. We went there for a smoke or just to hang out, and this was one of those occasions. We always joke around about how whenever we are at church, we always see someone we know or have something interesting happen to us. Up to this point, all those instances were light-hearted and casual, so this particular experience really left a mark. To get the backstory, I kid you not, like 2 minutes after we sat down, an unfamiliar man started approaching us. It was pretty clear he was heading towards us, but we just thought he'd ask for a cigarette or a lighter. Once he was in front of us, he said he was doing research and wanted to ask us some questions. We weren't really interested, but both Elle and I were too polite to reject him right away. May I just add, he didn't look like he was doing any research. He was dressed rather shabby and didn't have a folder or a briefcase, you know, the kind of things that researchers usually use to keep track of answers, right? Anyways, he asked if we believe in God. Both Elle and I rolled our eyes and said no. We mean no disrespect to believers, but we are just personally atheists and hate when people try to convert us. I've had many people in my life trying to convince me to believe in God and the church, so I was pretty sick and tired of this charade, and I knew it was coming. He started asking why not. Elle turned defensive right away and answered his questions only with no, yes, or I don't know. I thought he'd keep pestering us for longer if we didn't answer, so I actually responded to his questions. He told us he reads the Bible in the church every day, and he saw how carefree we were and wanted to see if we were so happy-go-lucky because of our trust in God. He took my politeness as me being easier to manipulate into believing and tried to use me as bait to get Elle to talk. He told us that he imagined us to be two princesses in beautiful dresses in front of a golden castle, metaphor for the church, and that I was in the front begging Elle to join me so we could go exploring. This would be the metaphor for I was more open to believing than Elle, and I wanted to lead her down my path as well. Both Elle and I are 19-year-old girls of petite build, and this was a creepy dude in his 40s, so this comment about us being beautiful princesses was very unsettling. I'll repeat what I said earlier just to make it more clear. The man did not make me more open to believing. I was just more talkative because I thought it would make him leave us alone sooner. At this point, he sat down on the floor in front of us, so I lost all hope of him walking off soon. He asked Elle to roll him a cigarette. She rolls her own. and proceeded to say that he had his own after lighting the one that Elle had rolled for him. Elle is still pissed to this day because of this. She does not like wasting her tobacco because she buys very expensive tobacco. Anyway, he goes off on a rant, asking about how he has sinned and turned to God for salvation and forgiveness, and how he wants us to help as well because we are too pretty to be rotting in hell. Again, we are 19 years old. Man, calm down. In his rant, he mentions committing murder, and both Elle and I start to freak out. The man starts sobbing, crying his eyes out, and telling us that he condones to the killing of children. At this point, my soul is like fucking evaporated because I thought he'd go kill us somewhere. Just to clarify, he didn't mention murder by abortion or anything like that, but murder by using a condom. Make this make sense, please. Anyway, he shifts all his attention to Elle because she didn't want to talk to him, and he starts telling her to call him daddy, not the naughty daddy, but what a child would call its parent. He insists and even tried to hold her hands, begging her to say it. He told her to ask him, quote, "Do you love me, daddy?" She, after refusing several times and him insisting, finally said it, and he started sobbing even harder and told her he loved her with all of his heart and that he prays for her every day. Elle and I look at each other, freaked out. We cannot escape because he is right in front of us and we need to climb on our bikes. So we are literally stuck with this sobbing, creepy man who we've just met. He said he witnessed Lucifer coming down on earth and told us that we must convert now or else we can't be saved. There was also a series of earthquakes hitting our area since last March, and he said that the last earthquake hit because he sinned and God was angry at him. He continued to ramble some things until he calmed down in a matter of 10 seconds and asked us how familiar we are with men. Translating from my mother tongue to English is weird. If it is not clear, he was asking about our sex lives, okay? At this point, I am so over the guy, and I will tell him right away. I will not keep answering any of his questions. He says that he understands that I don't want to talk about it, but keeps pestering us until I tell him to F off. Elle is silent at this point, traumatised by the fact that she had to call this creep daddy. Yeah. He then makes us promise that we will consider his offer of guidance in the art of belief. His words, not mine. And tells us to meet him there tomorrow when he'll take us to his house, apparently around the block, so we can have private lessons. He even said he'd bake cookies for us to share over a talk about God. Needless to say, we haven't been to the church benches for 2 months now and haven't seen this man since. To the extra creepy man in front of the church, let's not meet again. This story happened to me when I was about 20 and I was in college. I'm 25 now and away from that school. This happened about a year after the serial killer was captured like 3 miles away from my campus. My roommate matched with him on Tinder right before he was caught too. I can post about that later if you're interested. This was also after the 2016 clown sightings in the US, to put it into perspective. I was visiting my friend who was an RA in a different building across campus. I would visit and do homework almost every night and then walk back to my dorm around 2 a.m. It was like clockwork. Dangerous, I know. I'm a tall, skinny girl, but I can put up a fight. There were 2 ways that I could get back into my dorm. Through the student centre or a shortcut through the streets. If it was nicer out, I would usually take the shorter route because I like looking at the stars. As I began walking to classes, I noticed a white rusty looking car kind of following me. It was only periodically when I would notice it. The man in the car always seemed off to me, but the college was a small town. It wasn't unusual to see people who actually lived there around campus, given the main road was in the town ran right through the campus. One night, I was walking out of my friend's dorm and was going to take the shorter way home. It was nearing the end of the spring semester, and it was really nice outside this time of year. I reached the point where I could take the student centre or cut through the streets. I was about to take the streets when I suddenly froze. I kind of stood there with this gut feeling not to take the street and to go through the student centre. I was tired and I wanted to get back sooner. So I was really thinking about just ignoring my gut and taking the street. But after a minute of debating, I just had such an unsettling feeling and I decided to go through the student centre. I had to take a bridge over the street that I would initially cross. Once I was at the top of the bridge, a car turned on its light and came out of the side area that I would have gone to if I would have taken the street. My body went cold and frozen. It was the white, rusty car that I had seen periodically around the campus. I heard the guy say to someone else, "I don't know, she usually comes at this time." I sprinted so fast into the student centre and sat in one of the chairs for a bit. My heart was racing. I didn't want to go back to my dorm just in case someone was following me. Eventually, I made my way back into my dorm and fell asleep. I made the decision to never go through the street alone at night. So, to the creepy guy in the white car that knew my schedule, let's not meet ever. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for listening if you made it this far. That was 3 scary stories from Reddit. Let's not meet. If you like the content that I am putting out, I don't know how you say it. Please do subscribe if you would like to see more content from me, like, share, and of course, please do leave a comment. I'd love to read your comments, and that is all from me. So until next time, I'll see you in the next video.